Really appreciate everybody being here today. My name is Jeffrey Hooper. I'm the Chief of Police for the City of Hutchinson. I'd like to recognize a couple people that are here. Interim City Manager Gary Meager and District Attorney Tom Stanton is here and present. He will be available as well. And I'd also like to introduce some of my staff that was instrumental in breaking this particular case. Captain Bryce Burley, who's in command of operations, Detective Lieutenant Dustin Lepp, Detective Sergeant Garrett Leslie, Patrol Sergeant Darren Truin, and police officers or patrol officers Taylor Grace and Manuel Luna. I'll be making a statement and then I will open it up for questions. Please understand that this is an ongoing investigation, so there'll be a lot of details that I will not be able to share with you today, but we will be as open and transparent as possible. When I came into the agency in 2018, shortly thereafter, within 3 weeks, we had a sexual assault that occurred in one of our parks here in the city of Hutchinson. And at that time, I was notified by my staff that that assault was related to a series of assaults that had been occurring in the city of Hutchinson since 2012. And at that time, I was also made aware that to that point, the police department had not released any details to the public. So on November 6th of 2018, I held a press conference and we released details in reference to those series of sexual assaults that were occurring in our community, mostly related to and designed to alert the public of potential dangers to our community and safety precautions that they could take should they encounter another incident that was similar. After that press conference, those sexual assaults ceased in our community. The Investigations Division, though, continued to work very diligently on those particular series of crimes, exhausting all leads and putting in countless hours to try to solve those particular cases. I think it's important to note that those cases were never put in a cold case status. They always remained active and assigned to a detective, and work continued to be done over those cases for the last several years, including when a sexual assault case would come into the Investigations Division. Each one of those cases was reviewed and looked at method of operation and standard patterns to see if any of them possibly could be related to the serial assaults that we had that occurred between 2012 and 2018 to see if our perpetrator was possibly active again in our community. Here most recently, we started having a series of prowler calls and window peeping calls that were occurring in Hutchinson. That information was passed along to our Special Operations Bureau and more specifically to our Criminal Intelligence Unit, who sent out information in regards to certain patterns of crime and certain ways that we thought we could combat those particular prowler calls and window peeping calls. That information was passed on to Operations, and the Operations Division, and specifically in this case, Sergeant Truin and his crew, took that information and used our community engagement initiatives, made contact with residents up in those areas in an attempt to both gain information and let the residents kind of know what was going on in their community so that they could be safe and keep an eye out. It's really between those joint efforts with our community that we're able to solve crimes like this. That particular activity and action by our officers led to Officer Grace and Officer Luna being able to detain a suspect in the immediate area of one of those prowler calls. That information in those cases then got forwarded to the Criminal Investigations Division. Through great police work and follow-up, Sergeant Leslie and Lieutenant Lepp were able to piece those cases together and gather enough information that led them to believe that those prowler calls were related to the sexual assaults that had occurred between 2012 and 2018. They were able to put those cases together, forward that information, and work with the District Attorney's Office. And the District Attorney's Office this morning filed charges in those particular cases, and a warrant was issued. And this afternoon at about 2:30, we arrested a gentleman by the name of Todd Allen, who's a 51-year-old male who lives and resides here in Hutchinson, on multiple counts, clearing 17 cases, counts related to rape, kidnapping, aggravated indecent liberties with a child, aggravated sexual battery, and other charges, misdemeanor charges related to those prowler calls. Furthermore, I wanted to let everybody know that Mr. Allen is a former police officer from the Hutchinson Police Department. He was employed at the Hutchinson Police Department during the time of those sexual assaults that occurred between 2012 and 2018. That was during the prior administration when I took over at the end of 2018, and we issued the first press conference. Mr. Allen resigned from the police department and has since been living still in the city of Hutchinson. I just kind of wanted to say that I am appalled and disgusted that somebody who is a suspect in these type of crimes and this type of behavior ever wore the uniform and this badge that I am honored to pin on my chest every day. But I'm very proud of this administration and all the men and women that diligently worked on these cases over the last decade and who today brought Mr. Allen to justice. So I'd like to thank them and their hard work. I'd like to thank the District Attorney's Office and Tom Stanton for their diligent work in partnering us with these particular cases. But most of all, I'd like to thank our community and the community effort and the support that we got from them and the tips that we got from our community, because together we were able to take somebody off the street that was a predator in our community.
You need to understand, at this point, all we have done is file a charging document. The defendant is assumed and presumed innocent until proven guilty and found by a jury or otherwise found by court to be guilty. So nothing that's being said here today should be considered anything but an allegation at this point.
And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So all these crimes that he's been charged with occurred prior to the 2018 announcement or the press conference?
That's all the sexual predator, sexual assault calls occurred prior to that media release, that press conference on November 6th of 2018. The most recent prowler calls have occurred after that time period.
But the crimes, the sexual crimes he's going to be charged with date back to those. There's nothing that's occurred since then that...
Correct.
How many victims are there?
That's something that we're not going to release. We haven't had the opportunity to contact all the victims at this point, I don't believe.
When you did the prior press release or conference, you asked the public to come forward if they had been victims. Did any come forward after that?
Actually, we did have a victim come forward after that particular case, and some more cases were added. But even they came forward after the press conference, but those incidents occurred prior. And likewise, we do suspect there may be other victims out there, and we would encourage them to still come forward.
Is there specific forensic evidence connecting this person to these crimes? Do we know?
Something I can't discuss.
Fair enough.
Chief, obviously this didn't occur under your leadership in the department, but what significant changes have been made, and are there any changes that are going to be made to ensure that nothing like this happens within the police department in the future?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. Yes, it did not occur underneath my administration, and one of the things that I did when I got here was we completely changed our culture. And one of the first things I indicated is that we are going to be a premier police department, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable, and nothing but excellence in law enforcement was going to be tolerated inside this agency. Several members of the prior administration, if you've been following us, have been terminated, and others have resigned. And we've put people around us and put people in this organization that the community can trust. We are working on becoming an accredited law enforcement agency so that we're going to be able to prove that we are the elite agency that we say that we are. We have a complete and thorough internal affairs process. We have an advisory board that reviews our policies and our discipline. We work with the City Human Relations Office for that as well. And so we've put systems in place to ensure that we have the proper men and women with the proper heart and the proper mindset and the proper ethics and morals to serve this community.
What rank was he at the time of his resignation?
He was a patrol officer.
Okay. And would he, and you can't speak to your prior, the administration before you came in, and I don't expect you to speak for him, but did you find, or can you comment on his involvement in any of the cases, maybe responding to reports or anything? Would he have been able to influence investigators prior to you coming into your position?
Certainly don't have any direct knowledge of that, but I do know that the casework that my detectives did is solid and is above reproach.
I was just meaning, sorry, before you came in.
Right.
Can you comment on the age range of the victims?
I won't comment at that at this time. Thank you.
Do you know if he was a church deacon?
I do not have that information.
How long did he work at the department?
I'm sorry?
How long did he work at the department?
It was over 20 years. I don't know the exact dates.
Are you looking at crimes prior to that, or is that pretty much the period?
We've investigated all the cases and incidents that we are aware of that possibly could be related. But like I said, all the cases, Lieutenant Lepp is very thorough, and all the cases that come into his division are thoroughly reviewed. So I believe that all the cases that possibly could be related that have been reported to us are included.
If there are other people, other victims, what can you say to them to bring comfort to them so they are comfortable coming to you that they might not have been before?
Yeah, and I very much appreciate that. We are here for our victims, and it's one of the things in our meeting we had this morning with the District Attorney's Office that we hope to be able to give some comfort and relief to the victims, because they're the ones that really matter in this particular case. And I can't imagine being traumatized a decade ago and now just finding out potentially who the suspect has been. Certainly would encourage anybody else that may have been a victim to come forward, and maybe they too can get closure from that particular case. And one of the things that I talked to Mr. Stanton about is that we have nothing if we don't take care of our victims in our community. And so I think that's the most important piece here. And I would encourage anybody to come forward and let us and let the District Attorney's Office be their voice of justice.
Would any of the victims have known his position at the time that these crimes occurred?
Certainly don't know that, and it wouldn't be something I could speak of even if we did, yeah.
You know what his bond is and whether he's in the jail here?
We will, yeah, we'll give you a document before you leave here today that will list all the specific charges and the number of accounts, and that will have his bond on it, so you'll have that information before you leave here today.
He is scheduled for a first appearance normally at 9:30.
Okay. So if you didn't hear that, he's scheduled for first appearance tomorrow morning at 8:30.
9:30.
Oh, I'm sorry, 9:30. Anything else? Okay, very much appreciate everybody being here today, and thank you very much.